Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
Hey, everybody, it's Jared. I'm telling you right now, I am pissed. I don't know about the rest of you, but I am tired of reading stories from, it doesn't matter where it is, from New York, from Tulsa, from California, about another illegal alien that has murdered or raped or assaulted a U.S. citizen. I don't know about you, but I am just right there. And I just can't understand how the folks in Washington, D.C. just seem to just be like, oh, whatever. It's just another incident, just another person. They don't even name the victims. And I don't know. Oh, man, I'm trying to get this across where I'm like, oh, man, how do we even discuss this without just completely losing it? So,
Yeah. The problem with this, Jared, is there's no accountability. There's zero accountability. And for a criminal, that's what they're going to do. Just think about it. If you can go out and ride a dirt bike and not have a license plate, or as those guys have the will run on the back of those speed bikes and take off. And if that's just a car, if you can do that as a person and come in and not have an accountability, you can do what happened to Rachel Morin or any number of our victims that we're going to talk about.
Yeah. Well, Tom, I'm telling you, I'm going through this permit process for this, shop that I want to build on the back of my property. And I'm telling you, just with my own city here in Utah, just trying to get the permit process to build something on my own property, I have to go through these massive, loopholes. And it's a pretty small incident compared to, a lot of this stuff. And yet these other illegal immigrants, they come across here into our land, uninvited, and then do these heinous crimes. Okay, well, we'll get into this, but hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of All Things Crime. Just want to welcome you in, and you can tell that we're kind of fired up, and we're already into this. But while we're here, definitely go down there and smash that subscribe and the bell, and share the episode, and definitely appreciate all of you out there. But and I guess I should apologize, but I really don't want to, because frankly, as an American citizen, I'm just fed up. You know what? You cannot do what is happening in the United States in any other country. Go to like, some of these men that we're talking about that raped, the guy that raped Rachel Morin here. He's from El Salvador, I think, or, and there's another one from Ecuador. There's some from Venezuela. Go to those countries and go rape one of their citizens and see what happens. Break into, one of these countries uninvited and demand that they give you food and shelter, and then abuse their citizens and see what happens. Go to China and just walk into China and see what happens. You are going to be, you'll be in prison so fast, your head will spin. And yet in the United States, these people are just operating almost without impunity. And, frankly, I'm just tired of it. So Tom, I don't know about you, but I was reading this morning, and the latest headline that I just read is about a young girl, 12 years old. Her name's Jocelyn Nungary, and she was raped and murdered by 2 Venezuelan illegal immigrants. And that's just the latest of them. We've also got the Lake and Riley story. That story sends me over the edge too. It's like, how is this guy? They catch him in New York. He assaulted somebody in New York. Then he goes down to Georgia. He gets a job. He's not even he's not even here legally, and yet he murders Lake and Riley. We just read about this, in New York City, this guy from Ecuador holds a knife to a 13-year-old girl in the middle of the day and rapes her in a park. And fortunately, they caught him. And frankly, that dude's lucky to be alive, because when the New
Mm-hmm.
Yorkers caught him, man, that was a bad day
Yeah,
for
it could have been a
him.
Richard Ramirez deal where they did administer a little street justice. If you recall, the Night Stalker back in the when he was captured back in the 80s, 90s. Yeah, could have been just like that, and real quick. And people are getting angry, quite honestly.
Yeah.
If I had to get an assessment on it, Jared, the amount of shootings that taking place rather than just road rage, they're shooting each other and everything else. So people are seething because of this. And what it comes down to is we formulate an agreement in the United States, and that's called the law. And we adhere to the law, and everybody does. If it's simply your shed or workshop you're building in the back, we adhere to it. But there's certain folks that seem to come over and want to exploit that. And what happens is there's a strong tipping point, and it takes a while to get to it, but people finally get tired of this. And so what you see now is they're seething. They're tired of seeing their entire neighborhood going to pot, and they're beating this guy up and everything else. So let's hope we can hold it together and we stop with all this madness that's happening out on the road and everything else, because people do not feel validated. They don't feel like they're getting their day in court and they're being treated fairly when everyone's waiting online. And then we're seeing examples of this, in this heinous example right now. And as long as I'm on a roll on it, let's talk about it for a second. Our offender who was captured, who raped and murdered Rachel, and I'm not even going to name him on here, but my understanding is from a Tulsa press release was he was wanted for homicide down in El Salvador. This is insane. If this guy was wanted down here and he came across our border, and I think we were speaking earlier, he's been stopped a couple of times. Like, how did we not get onto this? And before I say all that, and we just make it go for it, man.
Tom, it's incredible that according to the timeline that I've read, the guy murdered somebody in Ecuador. He murders a lady in Ecuador. He probably raped her too. And within a month, he's in the United States. So this guy not only evades his own justice down there in Ecuador. So yeah, this guy is basically caught twice at the Border Patrol coming through the ports of entry. They kick him back. They send him back to Mexico. Said you can't come in. I don't know why the red flags didn't hit enough with Border Patrol. Probably because they're so restricted right now. But and then the guy, just comes through the border somewhere where it's not guarded well, and he's considered one of those 2 million gotaways. And now he ends up in California first, I believe, and that's where he assaulted that mom and her kid, and that's where they've got the video of him actually leaving. He's on a ring or something like that. That's
correct.
They've got the video of him leaving, and he's shirtless, and so they said that he didn't sexually assault the mom, but based on this guy's track record, I'm not really sure about that. But regardless, they got his DNA, and then he ends up out in Maryland, and that's where he ends up attacking Rachel as she's out there on that jogging path. So Tom, I know you've done a bunch of research on this, man. Tell me fill in some of the blanks here, so catch everybody up.
Yeah, so we have the Los Angeles incident takes place. It says a violent attack on a 9-year-old girl, and we know that it had to be a crime of some substance because they were able to get DNA from it. So they threw some pretty serious forensic resources to get that CODIS profile developed so quickly and to get that into the system. So this was not just a break-in of the house over here. So we got a pretty bad actor already out in California. Then we have the Maryland, I'll call it Maryland incident, which is our murder of Rachel. By the way, let's correct the record a little bit over here. First, I pushed out that we had the trail, the Ma and Pa trail over here, and we actually, if I recall, reported it west of it. Since that time, they've expanded that trail, and it actually was in a different area on that now longer form of the Ma and Pa trail. And what we do know is, just like Ranger School, Jared, he sat in wait, is what they think, attacked her, probably beat her unconscious and dragged her into a culvert pipe under, concealed location, just like a panther in the woods, how it's going to wait and attack. And he had probably planned this out, knew what she was doing. And this type of people, this is what it does for them. When I say this type of people, I'm talking about that special class of rapists that us experienced investigators have dealt with over the decades And this type of person lives for this. That's what they do. They travel from area to area, and when it starts to heat up, they get out of there. And when it heats up, they do this sort of attack and they move to another location. So when you start seeing multiple locations like we are with our guy here, so we know that we have El Salvador, Oklahoma is ultimately captured, Maryland, Texas is thrown in on the wanted bulletin that has the captured across it, by the way. That came out last night in research. And then our LA incident, that it comports nicely with exactly what these guys do. They're a special class of rapists that live for that stalker type. And if the 4, 5, 6 different types that they've had over the years, there are opportunistic, there are people that are acquaintance or date rapists. This guy is a special class because he sat and wait. And like I said, like a puma attacked her. And this could be anybody, our victim out there, just waiting and waiting and waiting. And we've got to draw the line somewhere with what we're going to allow into the country and have some sort of accountability. We can't let rapists come in here. They're a real country, I get it, but we have to have some kind of accountability. And now we've lost control. We've lost control in the United States, and we have this running around. And I think you cited 6 examples is what I see. And you know me, man, I can really rail on this. So let me come up for air for a second and give you a chance to talk on this. But this is the 2 things that I wanted to correct was the Mom Pa trail. And previously somebody had a good lead. They thought he had a cauliflower ear like he was an MMA guy. I don't see that to be the case. It was just but I like how people were thinking out there, adding to the equation of what might have happened.
Well, okay. So imagine you describe this panther like, predator behavior. So this guy is sitting there. This is probably a pretty. I'll bet if he went out and talked to the people in Maryland that live around that trail, I'll bet there's people on that trail all the time, even early in the morning, like what Rachel was. And for this guy to be as much of a stalker as he was and being out on that trail early in the morning, scumbags like this guy are usually night stalkers. They're out there late at night and then partying and stuff. And then 5 or 6 or 7 in the morning, they're sleeping. But for this guy to be out there early in the morning, when Rachel is out on her walk run, but even then, there still had to be enough people. So he probably let other, maybe there are a couple of women that go walking together. And all of the moms that are out there and all of the women. I shouldn't even talk that. I said, think about it. My wife goes out walking and she takes our dogs, fortunately. And so she always has a little bit of a protection, but in a populous area like this, people are on that trail all the time. And you think about how many of our sisters, how many of our wives or our mothers are going out and exercising like this all the time. And yet you have this guy that's basically just a predator stalking our close relatives, our close loved ones. And it just, this is just, again, another one of those things that it just sends me over the edge. I'm like, are you kidding me? This guy should have never been in the country in the first place. Yet, because of the policies of people in the Washington, D.C., that are allowing these kinds of just complete scumbags into our country in mass numbers. And that's another thing that really scares me. Think about, we have over 10 million people that have crossed our southern border in the last 3.5, 4 years. 10 million people. That's 3 times the amount of people in the entire state of Utah. And how many of those, and 2 million of them are getaways? Well, there's a special category, like you were talking about earlier, Tom, a special category of, you were talking about predators and kind of the special rapist types, but getaways are special as well. And we all need to pay attention to this, because a getaway is somebody that does not want to get caught. Right now, if somebody comes across our border, they are looking, they're actively looking for a border patrol to surrender to. Well, that's the normal people. The rest of them, the ones that do not want to get caught by border patrol, they just want to get into the country. Those are your terrorists, your rapists, your murderers, and there's 2 million of those. Think about how many people 2 million people is. There's a lot of cities in the United States, most of the cities. In fact, there's very few cities that are actually 2 million and more. I mean, what is that? I don't even think like Detroit has 2 million people in it. In fact, I know it doesn't. Nashville doesn't have 2 million people. I mean, you're talking probably, what do you think, Tom? I mean, Baltimore, maybe? Does
Yeah,
Baltimore have 2
that's
million people?
probably, yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
it's a huge population. I mean, that's
it's
a
massive.
little less than 1% of the United States. A little less than one. I think we're up to 300 million. So there you go.
Yeah. Well,
There you go. So yeah.
so
Um,
yeah, 2 million people that actively did not want to get caught by the border patrol. Why? Why would you not based on today's environment, why would somebody coming across the border that actually wants to come here and be a part of the, be a US citizen and contribute and have a better life and have a better job and support their family? If that's the mantra that's going around, which is all BS in my opinion. But
yeah.
the
These
bottom line
guys
is,
and
yeah,
us investigators that just sit in their heads, and these are the ones that really change the entire community. And I write historically, and I do some film production, and we bring forth these stories. And I know police officers who have died with this in their head that they couldn't put this case down. We're clearing things. We just cleared something from the Colonial Parkway, recently. Awesome time, golden age of being able to clear these things. But these things will change a community for decades, to the point where the next generations won't even talk about it because it's just too painful to talk about. And I'm progeny from that, seeing that entire evolution of that. So
yeah,
how do we break that? Well, what these guys do, psychotic, is the blitzkrieg attacks, which seemingly make no sense at all. But this is a planned, calculating guy who dragged her back to a culvert like a cat does that. It drags her back over here. They're nefarious and they're calculating. So those getaways that you're talking about, what they're doing is they're figuring out ways that they're going to get caught. This is why it's so dangerous for a police officer being involved in a car stop, that at any given moment he doesn't know who this guy is, and then you end up with some incident where, I'm sorry, the name escapes me, but the guy's on the lam for 40 years, and they found out he died at his ex-wife's. It was buried on her property, if I recall, but he was hiding there the entire time. He killed the chief of police. That's what these guys do. They cannot be accounted for. So take specific provisions, which the public doesn't understand, to evade law enforcement scrutiny. And those databases that are out there are fingerprints. On the car, of course, is the VIN. On the car is going to be the license plate. So think about these databases that you're trying to, and that you've learned about, like an intelligence officer, to evade these sort of accountability. And then the DNA, which is what ultimately tripped them out. What else is a database that would get them? How about firearm? No, not so much. And that's not even the case over here because we just cannot track firearms. But what other databases exist out there on these things? Well, your telephone, which is a technical surveillance measure that they used in this case to aid them, because nobody anymore has house telephones. They have that walking and living tracking device on them. So it's hard to evade that. And even if you don't have one, that's a tell for anybody who's savvy as an intelligence officer. Like, why don't you carry a phone? Why is it being turned off? That's the Achilles heel for this, which is heavily used on that. Of course, law enforcement doesn't necessarily want to talk about that because that is giving tradecraft, that's giving information to our bad guys who will further exploit that, and they'll become better predators, which is what this guy did. He learned very quickly how to do it. And,
yeah.
let me take a break and say kudos out to the entire team. Tulsa, police who were able to walk up on this guy in a bar and arrest him, in concert with all the other partners that were working this thing around the clock. A big thumbs up to Scott Duffy for his keen observations and getting on to Fox News. He's a colleague of mine from the Baltimore, Delaware office, where I finished up at 4 years ago, and for his insights and everything else. But the
So he was
work on this.
FBI ERT then?
He was a supervisor for one of the Delaware offices up that way, but he had contact with the family, with Rachel's family, and understands this stuff very well. And you can't underscore how important it is to have those contacts at both the local and the federal level, because you can bring so many resources to bear. Um,
Yeah.
at the federal level, which is it's tough to explain, but things like mail fraud, things like money laundering, very complex investigative tools. And in this case, you can get to El Salvador very quickly. You get country clearance and get over there, and we have people on the ground, boots on the ground, that are able to run this stuff down. So it's very important to have those federal resources latched up tightly with them. That's what they did,
So
and that's what
what do you
Scott
think
did.
what do you think the agents down in El Salvador, Ecuador did?
Um, Yeah. So what my understanding is, and I don't have this substantiated, but this came through, is that he was wanted for murder down in El Salvador. I would guess walking this thing backwards is what they did. Was the attack happens and they did a phone dump from the cellular towers and saw who is accounted for and who is unaccounted for. And from those unaccounted for people, who is not in the area anymore. If somebody has fled the area, that's going to be suspect number one. Scott said very adroitly that you start at the center and you eliminate those people. So we eliminate family members right away and we begin to work outward. And who could possibly be that suspect pool? I would say they probably worked off the phone. And if you're not getting that phone hit and somebody is smart enough to block that phone or turn it off, and the phone is registering at other times, what's going on? Because fortunately for this attack, it's a remote area. So you only have so many cell sites that are going to log on to that. From that, you're having very sharp analysts and using some AI to develop that profile of the phone. And then what phone was registering out in Los Angeles. So that would be my guess on how they got onto this initially. And then you import that and mesh that up with the DNA profiles. But if we go down to South America, or if we get a name, I'm sorry, El Salvador, and the police there are good enough to say, yeah, this guy's a murderer. We know he's a bad boy, all the way back to age, and you're talking like age 15. And I'm talking to the other cops out here that have worked this the entire lives, and the agents that have done search these predators and these panthers is what I'm talking about. These are the guys. And let me break for a second. My mom was a crime scene technician. She put me on to a specific person in South Florida named Michael Siebert. He killed this woman, beat her. He didn't kill the first one in Hollywood, but he later killed this lady when he was released 10 years later, less than a year later. But these are the type of people that are handed down over time that says, watch them. And this is a legacy of when you work this violent crime. This is what happened to me, and what changed me is now, how could I go back to working bookkeeping or administrative work when you see what happened to these two victims over here? The same thing with this guy. And probably my point on this is El Salvador told them this has been a bad boy for years. And now he's not down. He's up in your neck of the woods. He's up in the United States, and he's become your problem real quickly. So yeah, no tired huddle masses coming into the United States. Send those, your wretched refuse. Isn't that what the title is? Nah, we're sending you serial killers and rapists. This is what happened in this case.
Yeah, well, they're clearing out their prisons. They're sending like Venezuela. I guarantee Venezuela is sending. They're probably letting people out of their prisons and saying, "You cannot stay here. We will let you out of this prison if you go to the United States. If you just leave. The United States is obviously the place where everybody wants to come anyway. And so, yeah, they're clearing out their mental hospitals, their prisons, everything. They're getting rid of all their the underlying criminal aspect of their population, and they're sending them all here. And yeah, out of the 10 million plus that have come up here in the last 3 years, are they all criminals? No. But you know what? Out of all the people that were here in the United States at 9/11, 20 of them brought down the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. So it doesn't take a lot of them, folks. We have these rapists and murderers that are walking through. And again, back to what I first started with, it's all avoidable. None of this is there's no reason for any of it other than the people in Washington, D.C. want the chaos and the pain and suffering that is being caused right now. And that's what actually pisses me off the most, is just because I'm like, you know what? We actually have, quote, quote, leaders in our country that are doing this on purpose. And that, to me, that's the equivalent of, again, going back to my city, and trying to get these permits that I'm trying to do for the shop that I'm trying to build. Well, not only, so that's like those guys saying, not only Do you have to go through all of these hoops to get this approved on your own land? Sometimes I just have to laugh about it because I'm like, really? Okay, so this is where we're at now, where a law-abiding citizen has to do all this crap, and yet, and it's kind of like them also telling me, yeah, we'll approve this after you've done all this paperwork and paid the fine or paid the fees and everything, and you cannot lock your front door. So from now on, you have to take all the locks off your house.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do another analogy like this.
Yeah.
Okay. Back when people used to go to the movies, you're sitting online in the movies waiting to go see this great movie and everything else, and somebody brings their family in and they were holding them in line. That's fair enough. Who's got a problem with that? And then more people come over. Well, then another set of friends come over, and soon now you're 20 places back and you're a little bit annoyed about it. Okay. At what point are you going to say something? But now you go in and say you're line number 30 or 40 in there. You walk in this big theater, and then you find out there was a whole nother line, and all the seats are taken up by people who didn't pay. How about that? Would that infuriate everybody? So the point is, you're not the only one that's pissed off. Everybody's pissed off right now. And now it's come full circle. We have all these people out here that are running around doing this kind of madness over here with no accountability. And the thing is as I was saying before, you come to the United States, you agree to a set of laws, you abide by the law, and whether you like it or not, that's the law. And you know, there's things that nobody likes, but we cannot drive around without a license plate on a car. You cannot drive around on a dirt bike with no license plate or a speed bike with nothing on it, with no accountability. And it's all fun and games to run from the cops and everything else till you hit somebody and you kill them, which is what just happened in New York. Or now you have an accident where you slam into somebody who pays their insurance diligently and everyone's insurance goes up. So at what point are we going to lower the insurance rates and hold the people accountable for those police chases? The amount of damage that's going on when they slam into these cars and everything else, and nobody is held accountable for this stuff. They seem to just write it all off. Well, you know, everything is going up in price, insurance and everything else. And at what point are you going to hit a tipping point where somebody's going to say, now, hopefully the reset, you know, the balancing out just goes, okay, this is enough. But what I was saying before is people are seething. They're angry about this and they see this stuff going on. And if it's your own family member and this is Hartford, and I know people who are there who chimed in with their comments about this, they're upset about that, and it's their own backyard and they try to keep things clean and nice. And, you know, and this is any town USA, and this could be 37 years old with children. Yeah. That could be anybody.
Well, you know, it's not very often that a sheriff will actually call out Washington, but I want to read this. When they gave the press conference, you know, about catching this guy that killed Rachel Morin, it says right here, the sheriff turned his attention to the crisis at the southern border, directing his remarks to the White House and to, quote, both members of it should be houses of Congress, but both members of Congress. He said, we are 1,800 miles off the southern border. And his name's Sheriff Galler, it says. And American citizens are not safe because of their failed immigration policies. This is the second time in 2 years that an innocent Hartford County woman has lost her life to a criminal in our country illegally. He said, repeating his statement. In both cases, they are suspects from El Salvador with ties to criminal gangs. This should not be happening. He says the guy's name, did not come to this country to make a better life for him or his family. He came here to escape the crimes he committed in El Salvador. He came here to murder Rachel and, God willing, no one else. He said, but that should have never been allowed to happen. And you know what? Amen. And kudos to that sheriff for calling out the people in Washington, D.C. or setting all this policy. And, you know, it just, I did a couple of podcasts a couple of years ago, and I called them, the beast, I can't even remember now. my own podcast, I can't even remember the stupid title of it.
We've done 300 of them, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, 400 actually. No, I guess, but as far as like full episodes, there's like 300. So, you know, I hope anybody that's listening or watching, you go out and hopefully you can enjoy some of those. But Evil, the Beast, and the Buffet. That's what the series that I kind of did was. And frankly, the Beast is basically what the people in Washington D.C. have created, because the Beast is this monster that is devouring the country. It's devouring each of us individually. It's devouring the rule of law. It's devouring any semblance of humanity. Like you were saying, Tom, it's like people are just seething. There's so much anger out there now because of these unaccountable, not just unaccountable criminals, but unaccountable politicians that you just think of all the people that allowed this animal to come in and not only rape or not only assault the people in California, the mom and her 9-year-old in California, but also then eventually murder Rachel Morin. The people that allowed that to happen, how are we going to hold them accountable? And the first problem is it's so intertwined and intertangled. Like Secretary Mayorkas, that guy is as slimy as it gets, because you ever watch him in front of Congress, he is, that guy is so good. I mean, it makes me want to go have to go take a shower after just listening to the guy. He's so slimy, but it's holding him accountable is almost impossible. Well, the interesting thing about that is, what in the world are we going to do in order to change it? Well, the only thing we honestly can do is vote them out. That's the only way we can actually hold them accountable, is to get them out of there. And this coming November, I hope everybody remembers exactly what has happened here with not only Rachel Morin, but all the other victims that we talked about earlier. And even this latest one, this Jocelyn Nungary, 12 years old, a 12-year-old little girl, raped and murdered by 2 Venezuelan men. I mean, imagine the horror that this little girl, and you think about 12-year-olds. My youngest is not far, he's 13. And so basically, but I mean, officially, I think he's still 12. I got to check. Geez, man, it'd be nice if I could remember the age of my own kids. But, all of us know a 12-year-old girl, whether it's a neighbor or a niece, a little sister, all of us listening knows a little 12-year-old. You know how innocent they can be. And here this girl is raped by 2 men. Mm-hmm. And they're probably speaking Spanish at the same time, so that she doesn't even understand them. She doesn't know who these guys are. And that's the last thing that she remembers on this earth. And the horror that this poor little girl went through. So based on that, how are we going to hold these people accountable?
Yeah, and it starts small. So the sheriff, he takes ownership of this. When one of these things happen, that's even the contiguous cities, even in the entire state, everybody starts looking into this. I can remember a particularly heinous attack that took place down in Fort Lauderdale in the 1990s. Somebody walked by someone else with a cooler full of acid, and he poured it on the other guy, a revenge thing that was ultimately solved over there. But yeah, you want to talk about a slow, miserable death on this guy, and that's what, right? How can anything be much worse than that? That's what he did. All agencies were working this. Adam Walsh, all agencies were working this. Andrew Cunanan, all agencies were working this. And that was very similar to this, only we knew who Andrew Cunanan was, and we didn't have DNA. But in this case, when you have something as heinous as this, the entire police department works it. And those detectives and those investigators and that chain of command is basically staying in there and falling asleep at their desks trying to work this and generate leads, because things go cold and they go dry. Now, fortunately, we have better forensics and databasing and things like that. So there's a lot more leads other than just trying to sweat somebody and get them to give up something in an interview. But this is what these guys live with. And they're fine taking on that charter because these are good people, these guys who swear to take an oath of allegiance to work that, and they work as police officers. So what skews that? when they find out the system's not fair. They get in there and you finding out you have no accountability of this person. It's as simple as somebody running through one of those red light cameras and they put a shield on the back of their. Why would you put a shield on the back of your license plate other than to evade a traffic ticket? Hey, who wants to get a traffic ticket? Who wants to get a speeding ticket, or, who wants to not pay tolls? Anybody. And at what point does everybody start saying, well, if they're not paying, I'm not paying? Well, this is where we're at. And this is what we're talking about, Jared, is the seething and this anger, this underbelly of anger over here. So we're about to hit a tipping point where people are going to say, no more, no more on that. That's a dangerous time. So we want cooler heads to prevail over here, where we're not becoming informants on each other, things like this. But folks, we got to get it together here, and we got to start, being accountable. We agreed to a set of laws, and that's what's got to be.
Yeah, 100%. But I'm just saying that the problem is we typically, we'll turn our anger against each other, and that's not the right target. The target is the people that are setting the policy. What's the old adage that says an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? Far, far too many of us are looking at that pound of cure, whereas we should be saying, okay, the prevention is what should have been happening. And those that didn't do it need to be held accountable. And a big part of being held accountable is just kicking them out of office, getting them out of there. I mean, if people are setting bad policy, and it doesn't matter what level they're at, whether it's the president of the United States or the mayor of your town or a city councilman, or somebody that's on the school board, if they are advocating bad policies, the recourse that we have is to get them out of office. Well, there are far, far too many people that are just sitting back thinking that, well, somebody else will do it. It is time, folks, and this is our call to action. It is time to get involved. I guarantee you there's probably people out there listening to us right now that have never voted, probably in their 40s and 50s, and they've never voted. Well, you have an opportunity right now. There's primaries going on, and then after that is the general election. You have the chance to make your voice heard. And frankly, I think people should do even more than that. They should be standing up, going to city council meetings, getting involved with their state representative, and getting involved with their congressman, senator, sending letters to everything. It's like, if we as a citizenry do not get involved, then more and more of this, you think it's bad now, folks. I'm telling you, it can get worse, and it will get worse if we don't actually start taking back our country and taking it by the reins, because there are people out there that hate the United States that are actually here. And it's not just foreigners. There are people in this country, and we're kind of on a tangent here, but I'm telling you, I'm going to keep going, because there are people in this country that hate the United States. They hate everything it stands for. They hate the freedom that we have. They hate the fact that the Constitution gives us as individual rights, and it's not just from the Constitution, it's from the Almighty God that give us rights that we say are unalienable. I didn't even say that right. They sounding like Joe Biden. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, okay. What is the word?
Inalienable. Inalienable. Am I saying it? I got that one in my head now.
Man, now we're both screwed up. But anyway, and I was on such a good roll. What is wrong with me? My tongue just won't work this morning. But I'm telling you, these rights are from God. They cannot take them away from us. And well, they can take them away from us if we allow them, but they are not granted by the government. And that's the biggest problem. The people in Washington, D.C. right now believe that they are the ones that are the arbiters of whatever rights they want to give us. And, there's no man that should be able to have anywhere close to that amount of power. It is God that gives us that power. And if you don't understand that, then you don't understand our entire system, our republic. And in fact, here's another thing, folks. Anybody that says our democracy is in danger, they are the problem, because we are not a democracy. If you live in the United States, you live under a constitutional republic. That is different. And if you don't know the difference, then do the research. and look at the difference. Democracy is mob rule. Democracy is 50.1% votes on it, and that's the rule. A constitutional republic means that the individual has the rights. So let's just get that out there first. Well, the bottom line is let's circle back to where we started here. People that are breaking our laws, and these are all laws that we all adhere to and we all agreed to, like what Tom has said earlier. If you live in a society, there are certain rules that have been established. This goes all the way back to the caveman days, where the people of the cave decided on a certain number of rules, and they were probably just a family. That's how it started. But as society grows, you have to decide on certain rules that you're going to live by. And if you're not willing to live by those rules, then get out. Well, we have certain laws and certain rules that we live by. And part of those rules is being in a constitutional republic. The individual has the rights. And the government cannot take those rights away. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, let's talk about like an analogy here. Baseball. Everybody loves the sport, right? So we watch it and everything else. The hidden ball trick, okay, is a little swarmy, but that's the rule. You can't step off the base if the guy has the ball, and if he hit the ball and he tags you, you're out. And nobody likes looking foolish on something like that, but that's the rule. We understand that. Here's the problem. What if you're allowed to take a baseball and put it in your pocket and then take it out and you had a second baseball, and then the first baseman or the pitcher's hiding the ball and he doesn't do it? Now you're cheating. Well, I think if the rule is that you can take a second baseball out there and nobody said you couldn't, and the pitcher could do that during warm up, if everybody knows that, I think everybody's good with it. Do they like it? Maybe they resist it. And this is where the sheriff is coming from, and everybody in law enforcement is coming from. And I think everybody is out there. But when they start playing games with the law and they don't tell you what the changes are, and all of a sudden you find out that this has been going on, and then let's take it a couple of steps further. Now you have people that have enriched themselves with this, or they're getting a benefit, or they're getting in the front of the line, or they don't register their car. They're saving enormous amount, or they don't have to take their workshop and go through the process. They just build it on the back over here, and somebody rubber stamps it and pushes it on through. Who's going to be happy about that? And who's going to be the afflicted party on this? The aggrieved party. Who's going to be the person that's going to be angry about? Well, everybody's going to be, because now it becomes clear, it comes into focus that the entire thing is a sham out here. And this is what's happening over here. So be fair about it. Tell the sheriff what's going on. He's got a very good position on this, because how do you track these people? If you're going to say we're not going to track immigrants that come across the border, then that's fine. But there has to be other ways to do it. Then I don't know what else you can do from that, but at least you know. But when you sit there and you try to do something and you try to have an accountability for people based on car registration, and it's nonsense, this is what infuriates people, because they're tasked with it. In addition, they take that oath and they hold that very serious. Like I said, they're staying up late nights working this stuff, only to find out what you've been undermined by somebody who doesn't want to play by the rules, and throw out all the other stuff to find out. They're tasked with it. How happy would you be as a victim of that? You are Rachel's husband or family member to find out that somebody's operating and did this and they have no idea who it is. The person's in the wind. They may never uncover this person. Honestly, Jared, it's a miracle they ever found this guy. If he had done that homicide down in El Salvador and he left his cell phone behind, he could have probably been in Los Angeles, Maryland, and gone. And tell me where I'm wrong on that. What else? So we have some phantom CODIS number. And this is my fear 10 months ago when we did this, is we have Los Angeles, we have Maryland over here. You have phantom CODIS entry. You can do a genetic genealogy workup all you want, and guess where it goes? Nowhere, because the folks are down in El Salvador. And they wouldn't even known to go to El Salvador to try and do it. Nobody's entered into GEDmatch or otherwise. So it could have been very easily that way. We're, I would say a miracle, or very lucky to have put this case down. I say we, because everybody across the country is working this and everybody's looking, and that adds to it, right? It adds to the entire effort that we had back in, when we first started having Most Wanted, and even the Wanted bulletins going back to the Western days, and those police circulars. The public got involved in it, and that keeps that pressure up. millions of sets of eyes that are watching you. So kudos, for putting that pressure up, but very easily could have slipped through this.
No, everybody that has actually worked this case, whether they be, a web sleuth or an actual law enforcement, somebody analyzing the DNA, whatever you were doing, kudos to all of you. But that brings up one last thing that I want to talk about, Tom, and that is, think of the resources that were put together and put toward catching this guy. Millions and millions of dollars worth of investigations and manpower and forensics testing and all of that kind of stuff that is put together to catch this guy that should never have been here. That's another part that we think about how expensive, in the last 3-4 years, the average increase in our cost of living has risen 20%. So that means that $1, if you had $1 4 years ago, you now have 80 cents. And that, to me, that's just inflation because, so much money is being spent. Well, part of that problem is we're also spending money on things that we shouldn't have to spend money on, like trying to catch an illegal alien that's raped and murdered one of our citizens. And, a lot of that stuff, well, I mean, part of it is awesome because here in the United States, if you break the law and you kill somebody or rape somebody or really hurt somebody's and their family, we are going to catch you. And it doesn't matter how much we have to spend, what we have to do to catch you, whether it takes us 6 months or 40 years, we are eventually going to catch you. And that part of it, I love that part. It's our law enforcement officers do not give up on cases. Well, but at the same time, even though we're that dedicated to it, it also there's a cost to that. And it's a huge cost to the citizens. And again, that's all part of the standards that we agree to when we're part of our society. Is we're saying our rule of law and upholding that rule of law is so important that we're willing to dedicate millions and millions of dollars in order to get to it. Well, but there's a limit to how much we can actually do initially, or at one time. And the cost to the citizenry isn't just in the pain and suffering, but it's also in there's a financial cost to all of this. And, we could go, the financial cost of illegal immigration it's probably in the trillions of dollars. It's definitely in the billions. And that makes me just beyond sick as well. But, regardless, let's take it all back down to Rachel Morin. Here we have a mother of 5. She's out just trying to take care of herself, out on a jog, on a run, on a walk, in a nice, peaceful, beautiful little park, a trail that's going through Maryland, which is a beautiful part of the country anyway. This guy jumps out behind some tree. It's probably been waiting for her to come by. She's probably alone. There's nobody else on the trail. This guy is just a total predator, jumps out, like what you said, Tom, probably, approached her from behind because more than likely she had headphones on, stuns her, drags her into a culvert, rapes her, and kills her. And then he flees like a coward and, the pathetic piece of garbage that he is. And for what? And all a guy that shouldn't even be here. Well,
yeah.
I hope Maryland really takes care of this guy, not just put him away into a nice cushy prison where he gets 3 squares and a bed, and he's part of the El Salvadorian gang that's in part of the prison sentence. I mean, if Maryland doesn't actually really take care of this guy, this animal, then there is no justice for Rachel Morin.
I think here's the good news to end this on a high point. And historians that we are, both of us, and I do some of the film work, like I said, we're kind of at an impasse. I think we've hit a high water mark where what the the general public is willing to tolerate. What gave way to a lot of the tumult of the 60s was shown up in film. So when you started to have like a revenge film like Death Wish, Charles Bronson, Dirty Harry was sort of reflective of what we're seeing in society back at that time. And they said, okay, enough's enough with this. We cannot have keep giving everything away, because this was an outcry, and this was the productions of the outcry. And this is what you're starting to see, and people are waking up to what's happening out here. You can't have police car chases that go on for 40 miles out in California, where the guy is jumping from car to car and they're afraid to shoot him and they're afraid to try to pit maneuver the car. You can't tell me in the greatest country in the world, where I live on the space coast of Florida and we're putting up a rocket twice a week. One just went up last night. I didn't even know it was going on. That's how often they're going up, that we can't shut down a car remotely by having a method to do that. We can't instruct people to stop in the roadway on the interstates and put out a set of spikes that are going to stop a motorcycle before the poor kid who panics and runs. Let's put it in the best light possible for the victim. He's dead. The entire family's afflicted by this because he buys this machine that can go nearly 200 miles an hour. Or let's take a stolen car where they're damaging all sorts of property damage that everybody has to pay for, but more than likely they're going to kill somebody. And that's not counting the serious stuff about where they're shooting at police officers, or they usually, when somebody is doing that, and this is the drift that you get from that, is that formerly people would have a stolen car. Police look for stolen cars because the stolen car was indicative of other criminal activity. You steal a car to go do other criminal activity. Well, now everybody's running. So that's been watered down because they're like, well, I'll just run away from the police now. Why not? Well, now everybody's running from the police. And it becomes chaos out there. And you can't have that. The property damage, everything, the people are, the shootings are going to take place. And I heard it very, very well said when in one of the Patty Hearst documentaries, when they said, you need to come out of that house in San Francisco. That meant sometime. They're going to come out sometime. In Los Angeles at the time, it says, we mean right now, come out of the house. Well, this was a very different place than San Francisco was at the time. And that's what led to that house being caught fire. And this is what you're having. That same analogy is taking place. So people don't know what to do, and they're outraged, and everybody is armed in these states. There's so much. So we're at a tipping point where something needs to change. And as you talked about, I think some of the voting blocks are going to change things dramatically. But I think the public is now aware of all this. We can't have car chases going over 100 miles an hour and slamming into people and things like that. There has to be something that's going to change on that.
Well, the bottom line is everybody that's listening to us right now, you need to get involved. And I'm not just talking, get yourself informed. I'm saying, whether it's your city council or your mayor or your congressman, you need to contact them. And if they're not doing, their number one job is to protect the United States citizens. It's to protect the people that they are, their constituents. The only way to protect them is to stop this madness. And if they're not part of that, then you need to vote them out. And that is my, again, I'm going to put this out there. That's my call to action. If you're listening to me right now, you have to get involved. We cannot sit back and let these so-called representatives in Washington, D.C., who are not representing us. I don't care what party they're from. If they are not actively working to protect the United States citizens, then they are not working for us. And we need to get rid of them. And you know what? It's Rachel Morin is, she is, it's amazing to me. I think the amount of anger that is stirring up under this, and how many people are basically saying, okay, enough is enough. How many more illegal alien murder, rape stories are we going to read before this changes? And, I like you said, Tom, I think we've hit it pretty good, because the number of people that are just fed up, and the the anger that is underlying all of
They've
this.
been lied to. They've been lied to the
Yeah.
entire time. We play by the rules and everything else. Evil is going to live all around us, stuff like this. And we want to take the good people and keep them accountable and keep them from drifting to that. And we want to keep them educated in the best and keep them and tell them, no, we're not going to go that route. But the real bad people, the ones that I named before, we can't have that. And we have to have an accountability. So, you said
Yeah.
voting. I'll put this challenge out. Educate yourself. Educate yourself on what these police are talking about. Don't just passively sit there and listen to crime stories out there. Everybody delve into those details that we're talking about over here. Those behavioral profiles that are out there with these people that are just like off the scale, either psychotic off the scale or psychopathic. And the psychopathic ones are the real clever ones that have figured out how to work their way through the system. And they're going to see those things and evade them. They're going to take, and when you're able to see that slalom course that they're doing, you'll see why that person is just so nefarious, is so calculating in what they're doing. And when we walk this one back, you're going to find out that this is a very, very accomplished psychopath who's doing exactly what he wants with his, psychopath, evil. Funny to me that when somebody's psychopathic, they don't run around and do good deeds.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you can parse those two out. They become bad people. So yeah.
Well, and again, the ounce of prevention is what we need to focus on. And number one, be aware of your surroundings. You have to know who is around you. You cannot just blindly throw the headphones on and just think that you're safe, because you're not. And unfortunately, you're not. Even in small town America nowadays, there's like that girl. I can't even remember the name of the poor girl that was murdered out in, I think it was Iowa. She was out just on a run, and again, another illegal alien just tracked her down and raped and murdered her. Well, so yeah, be aware of your surroundings, but folks, get involved. You know what? And we have to demand better. It's like, I do not want to ever have to take the law into my own hands, but if it means protecting my family, that's what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, you said before about illegal and she's out for a jog and stuff like this. This is what I was speaking about before, when these guys attack and they soon move to the other town. This was the golden age of serial killers or rapists that would do that. Is they were able to evade accountability by going from town to town, pre-DNA era, certainly the 1980s. So they would assault and attack a girl there, and then the police would do their logical follow-up, and then nobody's there because it's a worker who's doing small town trades, and he moves from that area right away and springs to another place and he's gone.
Yeah.
And for him, it's a lot like deer hunting, but that's what does it for that person. That's what does it for that person. And those of us who have lived with it.
Yeah. That brings up a good point, is that we didn't really hit very well. That this case was solved with genetic genealogy. Now, folks, if you really want to help, here's something else you can do right now. Get your DNA profile from either ancestry.com, 23andMe, and then opt in to have your DNA profile uploaded into a database called GEDmatch. GEDmatch is the DNA database that is searchable on a genetic way, a familial way, so that they can create the ancestral tree of whoever the perpetrator is. So anybody that hasn't been caught and is a convicted felon, and so their DNA is in the national FBI database called CODIS. Well, now you can actually contribute and you can help, because the more people that get into, like, there's like 2 million people in GEDmatch right now. So if you get your DNA database, your DNA profile uploaded into GEDmatch, you will contribute, you will help to solve future cases. And everybody needs to do that as well. I know we're all freaked out saying, oh, I don't want my DNA to be in this, in anywhere where the government can track it. Trust me, they GEDmatch is different than the FBI database. Okay. And just because it's searchable, it doesn't mean that they're going to pin something on you. what that means is that your profile and your genetic makeup and your family tree is going to help contribute into solving cases. And you have to kind of go to some of these. It's called FIG, the Forensic Investigative Genetic Genealogy, and you can research on FIG to understand a little better of how the genetic, the familial DNA works and how they're able to solve these cases, like how the Golden State Killer was finally caught. That's all based on FIG, and it's an amazing new investigative tool, but it requires a DNA database that's robust enough that you can actually trace people down to like what they did in El Salvador. So that, again, that's another call to action. Just I know some people just don't understand, so they're all freaked out. They don't want to give the government any more information, but this isn't a government database. GEDmatch it's a private database, but law enforcement is able to search it and create these profiles. And that's how this guy was caught. So Rachel Morin's killer, even with all the other evidence that's, the cell phone data and all that kind of stuff that they had, again, the FIG was ultimately how they tracked this guy down. So there's another way you can help is get your DNA into GEDmatch. So
right. You go back to the 1980s, you had blood typing, pre-DNA. I know that sounds like a million years ago, but that's what it was. And why these unsolved, but that's how things were done. But that's how critical it is that, the searches, those databases be developed.
All good stuff, man. So, hey, you know what, Tom, let's, we may do an update on this if more information comes out about, Rachel's killer. But geez, it seems like every day we have new cases to talk about, and as sad as it is, so many of them are illegal aliens that are coming across here, and they have ill intent, and they just figure, there's no law, they can do whatever they want. They're freaking animals, and these people are just, especially this guy. If he's more than willing to commit a murder in his own country, then coming to the United States, we're just, it's like a slaughterhouse up here. It's just a bunch of sheep running around. And they just look at us like, we're just this money pile that, and all of our children and women are open for the taking. And, here you go. We're not going to do anything about it. Well, that has to stop. So, all right, brother. Appreciate you.
Yep.
Hope you, now that we've discussed this in such a dramatic way, man, I appreciate you and appreciate everybody out there. Again, hey, everybody, share this story, get the word out. We've had a number of call to actions, and I hope everybody adheres to those, and, get involved. Get your DNA in GEDmatch, call your congressman and your mayor and everybody, and make sure that, the people have that are doing these investigations have the resources they need, because people like Rachel Morin and her family, they deserve justice. And you, meaning, if you're listening or watching, you deserve to be safe, and you deserve to have a government that actually protects you and protects what you've worked so hard for. So take care, everybody. We will talk at you later.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.